What's up, my friend? My name is Ted Ryce, and you are listening to the Legendary Life Podcast. Today, I'm coming to you from Chiang Mai, Thailand. If you've been following my story, you know my wife and I have been traveling around the world for the past year, and we spent the past couple months in Chiang Mai. And it's really interesting because I'm doing this episode for you today about breathwork. I've got Niraj, the renegade pharmacist and the founder of Soma Breathwork, on today to talk about breathwork. I actually am going to a breathwork 2-hour class later on today. And if you've listened to my episodes about when I went to Rhythmia in Costa Rica and had an ayahuasca experience, you know that my first big breakthrough was actually not with ayahuasca, it was with breathwork. So I wanted to get someone on to share more information about this powerful method called breathwork. Now, you may know what meditation is. You sit there focusing on your breath or focusing on a mantra or do walking meditation, so on and so forth. But you may have never heard of breathwork before, or you may not know that much about it. So I got Niraj Naik on today to talk about it because he has a breath where he actually certifies people in breathwork. Now, I want to let you know something. Niraj is a bit more alternative health than the guest that we have on the show. So him and I, we get into some philosophical discussions about things. And I don't want you to be turned off by that because I know this isn't an alternative health podcast. We love alternative health, but we take a very evidence-based approach to things because I really believe in mixing ancient wisdom with cutting-edge science. But I want to let you know that Niraj has a really interesting story because he does have a background in science. He was a pharmacist for a long time before leaving that job and doing what he's doing today. So you're going to learn all about breath work. You're going to learn all about Niraj's backstory and what he thinks the big issues are with people trying to improve their health. And you're going to learn about how breath work can take your health and even athletic performance to the next level. Before we get rolling with that, really quick, I want to thank you again for reaching out and letting me know what you want to hear more of. So that's why I've changed up the intro. We've changed up so many things. We're going to make more changes based on your feedback. So thank you so much. And if you have some suggestions about how to take this show to the next level, who you want interviewed, what topics you want covered, reach out to me at legendarylifepodcast.com. You can connect with me there, or you can find me on Facebook or Instagram at Ted Ryce. So TEDRYCE. And you can reach out to me there. Let me know what you want to hear on this show. Let's get into the interview with Niraj, the renegade pharmacist. Niraj Naik, thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Fantastic to be here. A pleasure.
I'm really excited to have you on because I recently, like I just told you, had an experience at Rhythmia, drinking ayahuasca, having breakthroughs. But the first breakthrough I had while I was there was doing breath work. And I know you and I were both in Thailand. And you actually teach breath work, you run retreats on breath work, and you have this moniker, you're known as the renegade pharmacist because of your past. So I think let's start there so people who may not be familiar with you can learn a little bit about who you used to be and how you got to where you are now. So can you talk about who you are, what you do, and how you got here?
Yeah, certainly. So I'll try and keep it as succinct as possible because it's quite a story. But basically, I was a community pharmacist, a legit, pharmacist working in the community, a legal drug dealer, as you can also call it. And I actually got a really deep insight at this point into how messed up our healthcare system is. And for a long time, I was very frustrated working in a very, very dissatisfying job. And I wanted to do something about it. And, one of the big apparent things was seeing people going away with shopping bags full of drugs every month, not seeming to get better. And I was just the person dishing these pills out to them without any hope, just telling them to shut up and take the pills kind of thing. And, after a while, that gets really boring, very frustrating. And you feel you're just a pawn, a puppet in a system that is very dysfunctional. because the reason I signed up for this was actually because I was trying to help people, not make them worse. So what happened was I was actually very depressed. Like I was having suicidal thoughts every day. I was just incredibly in a low place, and I was drinking heavily, partying a lot to numb the pain of the sorrows. I blamed the world for all my problems. I was in a pretty rough state. And friends of mine, who had also, one of them is a psychiatrist. He was also as equally disillusioned as me. He was like, "Oh, let's go to this Tony Robbins seminar." I was like, "What the hell is that?" And then I looked at it and I was like, "No, you're joking. This is like the lowest of the low, that you could possibly go." Anyway, he bought me a ticket I had no choice to go. So they dragged me there. And it was literally the best thing that happened. Like, it changed my life. And on the last day, they talked all about health. This was like 2007 or something like that, And this is where it's huge paradigm shift. Because when you're a pharmacist, you don't get any training on diet, nutrition, or anything like breathing or anything like that. So I was like, what if I apply some of this knowledge that I've learned, firstly to myself, and then if it works, to patients. So I started to do that, and I came up with this very simple system because you literally have 2 minutes with the patient. So I basically just wrote healthy shopping lists based on their conditions, and I gave them like a simple analogy that they're like a car, and for years they put in the wrong fuel into the car. They put in diesel into a petrol engine, and they're just chugging around, and this is why they're getting the problems. So, and I said to them, like, the doctor's like the mechanic. You go to the mechanic when your car breaks down to get fixed, but the servicing of it you should do yourself, and you've not been servicing your car. So I used to give these simple analogies, and I used to give them little paradigm shifts with the diet, nutrition, and and how you can easily actually solve things like type 2 diabetes.
Niraj?
These medications, like very, very dramatic results getting people off the drugs. So I had doctors phoning me up. I had like patients, like parents calling me up saying, "What's going on? Like, this is amazing. Can you keep doing it?" In the end, I got fired from my first job for mismanaging the pharmacy. And then I wrote this whole CV as a joke on monster.com about all the reasons why I hate the pharmaceutical industry and why I never want to be a pharmacist. And anyway, I thought I'd never get a job again as a pharmacist. And I was like, how am I going to, do something with my life? And for some reason I got headhunted by the head office of Asda, which is owned by Walmart, biggest supermarket chain in the world. And they basically were looking for renegade pharmacists like me. They said actually those words because I had this other way of looking at the world, and they were wanting to encourage more forward-thinking people. So she begged me to actually come for an interview. So I went. I know, it was really bizarre, and I ended up getting this job. And I got promoted to the head office of Walmart. They had this little entrepreneurs competition where I came up with this healthy shopping list idea. And then I really saw, how the world works from the bird's eye view of being at the top of a major corporation. All of the darkness, all of the light, all of the things that you would consider would be going on at the top of a $1 billion business, in terms of the massive waste of food and billions of dollars of food being thrown away every year, and and this kind of cubicle environment where everyone's working like slaves, in the system to literally just be over broke, a job that stands for just over broke, in my opinion. And so you saw this, a lot of stress, a lot of people wanting to basically just survive and not get fired. So there's a lot of looking at bottom lines and profits. And so my idea was very renegade, telling people not to drink Coca-Cola, not to eat, chocolates if you've got diabetes and things, and to substitute foods, especially factory foods like ready meals and all these things for more healthier natural things that you can make, in a kitchen, like by yourself. It'd be amazing how few people didn't even know how to cook their own food. So this actually eventually got shelved as an idea of being too renegade, because it would have probably made too much of a dent in their profits if it became too popular. And, this renegade idea of being a healthier company was too ahead of its time. We're talking 2010. It's way too ahead of its time. And the director who had actually hired me, he left to work for Amazon. And so I was left in this sea of like kind of managers and other directors who just didn't want me to be there. I was a nuisance, somehow got through the loophole and was causing a problem. So, I was basically suffering a lot of at this point, just fear of going back to being a pharmacist, a lot of competition, from other people who didn't want to. I was just in an environment where I wasn't thriving anymore. It was like really desperately surviving. So that was when I got hit with a lightning bolt, and suddenly I'm now got ulcerative colitis, and I'm housebound for a year, shedding blood like 40 times a day.
Oof.
And I know. So it's an autoimmune condition. And this was the best thing that ever happened to me, because now I was forced to go inward and discover, the cause of my problems. And everything I was preaching, I had to practice now for myself. And they say God, another anagram for gift of desperation, G-O-D, gift of desperation. And I was at the most desperate point in my life. I was praying for a way out, because I got given two choices: either be a guinea pig for a drug that hasn't been tried before, or take your colon out, all right, and be shitting in a colostomy bag for the rest of your life. So obviously, like at that age of 30, the idea of having a colostomy bag was terrifying, So basically, it was very humbling. Like I had to really face a lot of inner demons, egos, and the prospective of not going to the toilet in the way most people go to the toilet, and having a bag attached to my waist. It was pretty humbling, and but I luckily got this gift of desperation, and this Swami, who's now a very close friend of our family, Swami Ambakananda, came to the rescue. She's a quite famous yoga teacher in the UK. And she came and said to me that you have a gift now, that if you can heal yourself with your scientific background, with your determination and passion to help other people, you'd be a major role model. If you can cure yourself from this illness, she said it's a gift. That perception change alone was enough to kick me back into, it gave me a new sense of hope, a new way of looking at the disease. And that alone was enough to trigger a massive improvement in my symptoms. And then I just did these basic techniques from my ancient system from India of yoga, pranayama, and meditation. And boom, I was healed within a few weeks, actually. I was remarkably better. Couple of months, I was back to full health. I'd lost 3 stone in weight, which is about 20 kilograms of weight. I was super skinny. I'd gone down to 40 kg at one point. Super skinny, man. It was like a complete. I became a whole new person, because you know that every 7 years we change every cell in our body, right?
Right, the cell turnover.
Yeah. And even after a year, you're almost a different person, right? So I changed completely. I became a new person, man. If you think who I was 10 years ago, actually, one of the reasons I got so depressed as a pharmacist was because my passion was music. I was a music producer. I ran raves. I DJ'd in clubs, and I never had an inclination to go and become a pharmacist, But I lost everything at a young age. Lost my first business as a music promoter. Ended up becoming a pharmacist. So I was a very creative person doing a very left brain role. And what I realized a lot is that, you can't prescribe the same thing to everyone. That, some people are suited to pharmacy careers and dishing out pills all day long. Others, that's the worst thing for them, and they need to be in more creative roles. And that was me. So I really started to understand who I am and what I need to do. And I'm much more entrepreneurial, and I'm not somebody who can work for someone. You know, I'm a renegade. I like to create my own systems. I can't follow other people's systems. So I really got into this inquiry, self-inquiry, to learn who I am and to go really deep into, you know, my nature. And so the meditation techniques, the breathwork helps you really wake up to who you are and to really realign with your truth, which is, for me, being an artist, a creator. And the best thing was going back into music and realizing that music is a powerful healing tool, and it's not that shit that you hear on the top 10 charts. It's actually a beautiful way of changing your state and enhancing it and combining it with like meditation tools, with breath work. It's a very powerful tool for state change, for getting deeper with yourself, to reprogram your subconscious mind, to become the architect of your reality, and all the things that woo-woo talk about, I actually can see can be scientifically explained. So I went into a quest to put scientific evidence and to figure out why I healed myself. What was it, the mechanics? Because I know that in order to reach people like myself, I needed to have the science. I needed to have the evidence. I needed to show mechanisms of action. You know, like, okay, how does praying to an angel, you know, give you healing? You know, there's no mechanics there. It's like you're not going to see the angel. There's no angel. You know, how do you explain all this stuff? So I believe that using psychology and the knowing how the breath works, meditation works, and how certain yoga asanas move the body and the energy around the body, and understanding a little bit about quantum physics, you can actually show mechanisms for why spontaneous healing can occur when you lie down and somebody puts their hands on you. You know, because maybe for the first time you're getting blood flow to areas that haven't been getting blood flow because you're lying down in a relaxed state. You know, it's maybe explains why Reiki works. Is that for a chance, just by lying down and having somebody just to care for you for an hour can be enough to bring down the contraction in the body, because a lot of the disease is caused by contraction, where you're in survival mode, fear mode, like low negative emotions like anger, hatred, jealousy. They cause contractions. The same energy of emotion, but the higher end of it, the positive end of it. So there's negative emotion, there's positive emotion. Positive emotions like joy, courage, passion. You still produce adrenaline, but instead of causing contraction, you create expansion. So it's like maybe what these ancient techniques, like that more in the New Age, like become more popular through the New Age, are actually ways of changing your emotional state. And through changing your emotional state, you go into expansion. Through expansion, you get better blood flow, better nervous flow around the body. You switch off stress, you go more into parasympathetic states. Maybe that explains why a lot of this woo-woo occult stuff actually works. You know, it's easier than we think. And so what I did was then I started to look at how can I combine some of this ancient stuff. What's the language that the rishis and shamans and people are using to invoke magical changes in people, and how can I use the same things? Because I live in a very hippie island full of like weird and wonderful alternative techniques. And I've spent time with Tantra teachers, with like, you know, people who claim to channel like entities and all this stuff. And I've noticed that there's very similar things that they're doing. They're using language to change emotional state. They're using postures and breathing techniques to switch off, you know, the sympathetic and bring in the parasympathetic and other things. So, and music is a great state changer. So I combine all of this together and create a technique called Soma. And Soma is really all about using ancient and modern protocols, bringing them together. It's very renegade because it goes against a lot of what we're taught in the conventional medical system. And I believe I've created an amazing system for getting really in touch with who you are, with creating amazing states of fitness and health, well-being, and waking up your inner pharmacy so that you become in control of your chemistry rather than relying on doctors and pharmacists to give you pills to do that. So that's what happened, man.
What a story. Very fascinating. And I love that you're a former pharmacist. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially if they've had to go pick up pills or they've watched their parents go that route. And it's just this thing where people keep getting worse, but they have these medical issues managed, diabetes, high blood pressure, whatever. And you keep going and showing up, and the pharmacist behind the counter keeps giving you your stuff, but it's this thing, it never puts you in the right direction. And I think important to point out too is that because most of our listeners are American, and so when you say, oh, the healthcare system's messed up, they're like, oh yeah, of course it is. It's just crazy, because it's really crazy here. But you're from the UK. And that's a totally different thing. And a lot of Americans even argue that our system should be more like Canada's system or the UK system. But it's all fucked up.
It's all the same.
All around the world.
Frontline treatment is medication, and that's wrong. Like, drugs are there for emergency situations, and they do wonderful things. If you have a car accident, if you need an emergency surgery, things like that, beautiful. They do great things for that. And even in India, the Ayurvedic tradition, there's a place for drugs, but they're the emergency, the last resort when all else fails. So the front line should be lifestyle change when we're dealing with chronic issues. So chronic conditions like heart disease, arthritis, autoimmune conditions, according to the Ayurvedic system, are a fundamental disturbance in the energy field, the spiritual nature of a person. When you go off spiritual alignment, it could be some trauma that happened that makes you go into this low vibrational emotional state where you hold grudges, anger, jealousy, fear. Guilt is one of the biggest causes of disease in the body. And they talk about disease from the perspective of an emotion. All right. If you hold on to anger for too long, the only one getting burnt is yourself. All right. Because it's a fire. Anger is a raging fire. Guilt is an apathetic energy, and it affects different areas in the body. So they show how different emotions can affect different centers in your body. Like anger and hatred basically affects the heart a lot. All right. Fear, like real, like scaredness, like affects the colon. You shit yourself. Okay. So there's all these different ways of looking at emotions and how they affect the body. But basically the idea is that through lifestyle change, we can actually make the body more resilient to the stress caused by negative thinking, negative emotions, trauma in the environment, and the shit that you throw into your body, because that's also causes stress, as physical stress as well as emotional stress. And the idea is that using holistic techniques, a holistic approach, we actually can bring the body up to balance and make it stronger against stress. All right. And the idea is that these techniques like yoga, pranayama, breathwork, Ayurveda, eating right, exercising right, doing something creative, being musical, creative, artistic, or whatever you do that you really love to do, it helps you stay more in these realms of passion, joy, and bliss. And the more you stay in these happier, positive emotions, the less chance you have of getting chronic diseases. So there's a two-part method of like fixing the mindset of somebody and the physical body. And then you come out with all these different branches of yoga, pranayama, devotional things like practices like mantras and singing and chanting and stuff like that. All of these things were like state change tools to make you more resilient to stress. Okay. So, but in the West, let's not say the West because it's global now. Let's just say in the conventional, popular globalist agenda, that's obviously not good because you can't patent that. It's not scalable because everyone's unique. So you can't just make a blanket treatment for everyone. Therefore, you're not going to get super rich by teaching holistic techniques over drugs. Drugs, you can make a patent. And with drugs, you can correct average numbers in the body. So you can make an average for everyone, right? Oh, your average cholesterol reading is such and such. Your average blood pressure is 120 over 80. It's all bollocks, by the way. There's no average for anyone, actually. And they should never, that's the most dangerous thing that's happened in healthcare, is putting an average number to everyone. So, so you go for your routine checkup, health checkup, which is also, again, one of the most dangerous things you can do for your health, is to go for a routine health checkup. Because suddenly you've got all these things off, like, oh, your average reading, the average is this, but you're there today, and blah, blah, blah. So you must have high blood pressure, therefore we must give you blood pressure medication. Or your cholesterol is slightly high, you must go on statins. So the doctor feels relieved, but then your risk of diabetes has now gone up to 50% in 1 year. The first year of taking statins, your risk of diabetes is up to like 50%. Right? If you carry on taking it for a chronic period of time, you're going to get problems of the lipid profile in your body, your cholesterol production. Most of your brain is cholesterol. Most of the cells are cholesterol. All right. So as soon as you start messing with the cholesterol in the body, what happens? You're going to get Alzheimer's. You're going to get dementia. You're going to get problems of, where the liver is going to get malfunction. You're going to get muscle weakness, which is all the side effects of statins that we're seeing today. All right. But they make loads of money for drug companies. So therefore, that's what's pushed. Obviously, it's what's pushed by all the big business people. So, actually now the biggest problem we have in the world is adverse drug reactions, right? That's the leading cause of death in the world, okay, is adverse drug reactions. I did not know that. Yes.
So iatrogenic causes because of drug side effects?
Yeah. So the leading cause of death is this, basically the cirrhosis of the liver, but not caused by alcohol, but caused by overconsumption of drugs. They did this study where they showed, and this was a very concerning study to most people in medical field, the fact that the drugs, in the body, what happens is they go into the body and they're like, the body freaks out. What is this? So anything that the body thinks as foreign and to the body, it thinks of it as a potential threat. So it throws it straight into the liver. Okay. So the liver has to deal with it. So that means that it basically causes a cirrhosis effect of the liver. Okay. Because it's known as the first pass effect. Okay, so whatever a body thinks is poison sends it straight to the liver, and this eventually leads to non-alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver. It's the fastest spreading disease in the world right now. Okay, and because every pill is a reductionist scientific chemical. Okay, so it's based on the reason why they make the drug is because they want to correct a number that they've deemed as this is the average for all humans. Therefore, we must correct everyone and bring them to that average. Whereas humans are completely irrational. We're totally illogical. We're not linear beings. What's your average is completely the opposite of mine. Okay? Like Gandhi's blood pressure, believe it or not, okay? Right? Okay, and Gandhi also lived into his 80s. Okay, he was like 200 over 100. He had the most insane high blood pressure. Yeah. He had really high blood pressure. Okay. And they were trying to treat him for it, but he didn't really believe in that. And what did Gandhi die of?
Yeah. Assassination.
Yes. And when he was like almost 80, I think, or in his 80s. I can't remember exactly the age he was. But yes, he didn't die of heart disease or blood pressure problems. He didn't have any of that shit. So there's many anomalies like this, okay, where people have very high cholesterol and they live way longer. There's people with diabetes even who outlive people who don't have diabetes. There's the people who go on the diabetes medications who die before the people who didn't take the medications. There's all these weird anomalies out there which get ignored because they don't make money. So this is what we need to wake up to, is this problem that we have where we're using medicine as the frontline treatment when it should be just emergencies. And chronic issues are all lifestyle problems. And you can now explain where this happens through the quantum world, because we understand everything is energy in motion, right? Energy in motion is emotion. So when you understand emotion and the hormonal system, you quickly figure out how emotions affect the body and the nervous system. And that by raising our vibration, changing our emotional state, LOVE, love, stands for level of vibrational energy. And there's a scale of emotion. When you're full of love, you're at peace, you're at joy, you're at passion. When you have no love, you're at apathy, depression, fear, anger, hatred, all of these low vibrational energies. That's when you don't love anyone, especially not yourself. And if you imagine we're all colonies of cells, okay? At one point, we're a zygote, single-celled zygotes that form together to form a harmonious collective consciousness of cells called organisms. Organisms became more evolved. We became us, humans. And humans are just simply organized cell structures with consciousness. And when you understand that, then you understand we are a community. And as the inner world reflects the outer world, if we live in a happy community, in the inside, we must live in a happy community on the outside, which means community is actually the cure for a lot of the world's problems. So I'm all about trying to form happy communities and live in community and be around friends as much as possible, do things together as a community, and that has been a huge transformation for me, like from being a very nuclear pharmacist, like on my own, like not talking to anyone at work, coming home and sulking and not speaking to anyone in my house, not knowing anyone in my street, to suddenly like having too many friends. Actually, I have so many I can't even keep up.
That's great. And Niraj, I think you bring up, you're bringing up some great points. And I think also that science is starting to catch up a little bit with like validating some of these things that we either intuitively knew or that have been something like, for example, in the blue zones, when Dan Buettner went around to the 4 different blue zones in the world where people disproportionately live to 100 compared to the people just, in the same country, but not in the same area. Community is a big part of that. And what you brought up about the psychological distress, I just shared something recently where I actually brought it up here. People who have psychological distress, unresolved psychological distress, 65% increase for heart conditions, 64% increase for stroke, arthritis, hypertension. And what you said about community, there's so much, Stephen Cole is doing a lot of research on this idea now. But like you said, you can't patent making friends. It's not something you can make like what you do, you can be an entrepreneur and see that and create a place where people can form a community and learn these alternative, or let's not even call them alternative, right? Let's call them like more natural ways of improving your emotional state and healing. I have mixed views on what you're saying about like the drug companies making money. I think that's a really good point. And I do believe there is the biggest conspiracy for all the people who are out there is the conspiracy just to keep the show running, because I got to buy. I've worked with so many wealthy people, and what they end up doing is the same thing that everyone else does. They buy one car, but that doesn't make them happy. So they buy another, or buy another house, or buy another purse, or, it's this consumption but it doesn't lead to lasting happiness. But they keep doing it because a lot of people are stuck, whether you're, a billionaire or whether you're just scraping by on minimum wage.
Yes.
But I think it's also important, like we've gotten to, I can't speak to the UK or Canada or any other place really, but in the US, we've also created there is this mindset that we have like, hey, I don't really want to do anything. I just want to take a pill. In fact, I remember this doctor complaining to me. He said, because he ended up writing antibiotic prescriptions. And in some cases, he knew it was a viral situation, which antibiotics, as you well know, but for the listeners' edification in case they aren't aware, antibiotics attack bacteria. Antivirals deal with viruses. So if you take an antibiotic for a viral issue, doesn't do anything except unnecessarily treat yourself with antibiotics. Yes. But he was saying, he's like, people come in here and they want something, so I give it. So everyone's just in this huge mess, you know?
Yes. And I think it's you've got to look at it in terms of like, we've been programmed to be this way. Like,
right.
It starts all with the TV marketing, media companies, and it goes even before that, where the ownership of the education of doctors. Okay, we can go down a real rabbit hole how we came up to this system, but basically there was a point in time where there was this guy called Flexner who wrote a report which basically ruled out anything that went against the studies of pharmaceutical drugs versus herbals treatments. And they basically phased out anything associated with herbalism.
Interesting.
And this was because the Rockefellers basically and the other families got together. They wanted to basically own everything and create this industrialized age. So they wanted to control all of the education. And so they basically manufactured this society to suit the industrial age. Industrial age needed people to be docile servants who work 9 to 5 on their asses all day long and don't question reality and their slave them. And this is going down a rabbit hole, but it's pretty apparent, it's obvious. And it all begins with you just have to follow the money, the ownership of education of doctors. Who owns that? Who is funding it? Who's funding the studies? You just follow the money. They all go to, from Harvard. Most of the bloody studies at Harvard are, funded by drug companies. So, that takes away a lot of the validity of stuff that we see,
Yeah. And it's always going to be biased. It's always going to be biased.
So much bias. Yeah. And then there's the problem where these herbal companies and herbal extract companies are doing the same shit.
Right.
So we're in this big capitalist battle between each other, So there's problems with capitalism. The fact that too much of a free market means the human greed factor becomes like destructive to humankind and people become literally slaves, unknowingly they become slaves because right from a young age you're programmed to consume and be a pawn in this system. And it's only when you really wake up and something shocks you into that awakening, like most people don't do anything, like they just don't question anything because they're comfortably numb. Great song about that, but basically we get shaken up. Some of us, like me, got sick, chronic illness, or just being an artist. The artists are chosen to see what other people can't see, the way to the other. And, like artistic people tend to see outside the box, but we live in a world that doesn't fund art very well. Like some people get lucky breaks, but most people don't. And those artistic people end up being dumbed down by a robotic system as well, robotized. I call it the biggest problem in the world right now is robotism, right? Where you've just become subservient and robotic by nature, and you're just following known facts, right? And not refuting false dogmas. And actually science can only move forward, okay? This Karl Popper who said this quote, not by repeating known facts, but by refuting false dogmas. And the problem we have is that the science community are brilliant at repeating known facts to create new studies to back up known facts without realizing that maybe those facts are actually false dogmas. And there's a lot of things like the saturated fat causing heart disease debate, which we now know is complete bullshit. But at one point, they wanted to make food cheap to ship around. So the way you make food cheap to ship around is get rid of the fat. But when you take out the fat, it tastes like shit. So you want to put sugar in it to make it taste better. So the sugar lobby, the shipping conglomerates, all these people club together to make food really cheap and easy to manufacture and to last on the shelves. The other problem with too much fat in food, it goes rancid. So low shelf lives. So
you got to hydrogenate it.
Yes. So basically, what happened was Richard Nixon was really a paranoid dude, and he needed certain people on his side because he thought he'd either die one day, be assassinated, or blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so the entire system was geared around creating studies that backed up that saturated fat causes heart disease. All right. So Ansel Keys was one of the big proponents. For given $100,000 as back in those days was a lot of money to prove this problem. And he basically cherry picked data. If you take 14 countries around the world and do a correlation graph of does saturated fat correlate with heart disease, saturated fat consumption. If you take 14 studies, there's no correlation. 14 countries, that's random. If you take 7 of those countries and pick exactly the perfect correlation, now you've got correlation. But that's what he did. He cherry picked the data to suit his theory, which has now become one of the biggest crimes against humanity because the statin companies create statins to lower cholesterol in the blood because the idea that cholesterol high cholesterol is caused by saturated fat consumption. And so by lowering cholesterol lowering drugs, we can cure heart disease, which is bullshit. It doesn't do that at all. So, so that was one of the big problems. Then the low fat thing, where everyone's eating low fat diets, has now led to people having less the healthy fats in the diet. Look at what's going on in the world. Alzheimer's, dementia, heart disease gone through the roof, right? Japan actually woke up. They actually followed America for a while. Then they realized everyone was dying. So they switched everyone back. You didn't hear about that in America. So in Japan, most people have a high fat diet, a decent essential oil diet.
You mean from the fish they eat, or where are they getting their fats?
They get a lot from sushi. They have a lot of sushi. They eat pork even. They eat a lot of food that contains saturated fat. It's like staple in their diets. And they live longer than everyone, and they smoke the most. They drink quite heavily.
A lot of smoking out here in Asia. Smoking, drinking.
But they live longer. They don't get cancer. So there's a lot of stuff you have to be careful of. You need to become if you want to really be healthy and not get brainwashed, you've got to become a statistician, a mathematician, and understand when people are screwing with you and messing with your heads, because that's what's been going on a scale that is so alarmingly. And I mean, I don't want to just keep repeating all the doom and gloom because there's so much positive out there. I really do believe that I've found a system now that is much more aligned with truth. It's based on ancient principle, thousands of years old, tried and tested. I've now trained with some of the world's top peak performers, like Wim Hof is a good friend of mine. My Swami, she runs a top yoga school in the UK. She's like in her 70s. She looks like she's 30. My doctor in India, has a clinic where he treats people with ancient pranayama and yoga techniques, and he has amazing results. And he can do yoga moves that you just blow your mind. Like, how does he do it? And so I've been very fortunate that I've learned from amazing people. And everyone seems to be warming to my way of thinking. I was just on the Ben Greenfield podcast recently, and he totally was like, dude, you're so on point. This is how it is. This is why, because he's gone through everything. I'm sure you have as well. And even in the fitness and health world, there's a lot of confusing things, right? A lot of weird anomalies. There's people who train like crazy endurance, like running and stuff. I'm working with a professional athlete right now, and he's a sports guy. And he says that 3 people on his team, like there's a professional team, have colitis, right? And there's a big problem, colitis, in sports, like people who do a lot of cardio, because intense running, right, which we've all been told is good, like running on a treadmill for ages, actually causes leaky gut. And it's a big problem amongst athletes, leaky gut. So that's one of the things I help fix. Now, if you look at Wim Hof, he doesn't do any of this. He does do crazy marathons, like to show what he can do, but he run in a desert for as a marathon with no water. He'll run a polar ice cap, marathon with bare feet. Does crazy shit. But he doesn't train like these guys do. He doesn't go down to the gym every day. He's like a yogi, man. He does yoga techniques, and he does yoga in a different style that you wouldn't see as well in the yoga studios in California. It's a very unusual way of looking at yoga. This is the original way of doing yoga. It's not aerobic exercise. It should be anaerobic. And, I can talk a little bit about the science that I've now seen that has much more effective, results for not just physical performance, but also your health and stopping diseases. I can talk a little bit about that and soma.
Well, yeah, we're almost coming up on an hour here, and it's a great conversation to have, and you're bringing up a lot of important points, and especially with the exercise. One of the things that I do is I try to get people. That's why I'm happy to have you on today. Is there's only so much weightlifting and cardio you can do, especially if you're running away, literally, from your or figuratively rather, from your problems. You've got to find some other way to deal with them. And that was not something that I've been passionate about for a long time because, if you constantly exercise is just stress. And if you do too much of it, and it can actually make you worse or cause leaky gut or arthritic issues, joint issues. And a lot of people, they just look to that because, like you said, it's what people promote. It's what we talk about. And definitely exercise is important, but doing the right amount is important.
And the right style.
Result. Yeah. Right.
Like my personal approach is anaerobic exercise most of the time with a little bit of aerobic, not aerobic exercise all the time. Because that's like riding a bike with stabilizers. I'll just give you a very short rundown. So when you contract your muscle like this, okay, like a static contraction, when you do yoga, right, you do static contraction. You basically cut off the blood supply to that muscle, okay?
Right.
And when you hold that to the point of exhaustion, as you should do with yoga, you should not flow from one pose to the next. You're going to hold the pose to the point of exhaustion. You're going to do it as though you're going to hold that pose forever, right? And you're going to basically go beyond the comfort zone every time, like slightly beyond the comfort zone. And what happens is it forces your body, your muscle, to use up all of its nutrients that it's got. It produces more myoglobin. It causes hypoxic stress in the body, which leads to stem cells moving out, causing you to grow stronger, more resilient muscles and tissues. And the next effect of that is, and is the most important thing, the whole system, soma that I've created, is you become extremely efficient at using oxygen. And this is really important. So the less oxygen you need, the less risk of oxidative stress you have in the body. So oxidative stress is actually caused by too much oxygen, too much fire being produced in the cells. So you imagine in every cell you have the mitochondria, it's the energy center of the cell. Oxygen comes in and it burns just like a real fire, glucose, which is like the coal, and creates energy, ATP energy. Now, too much oxygen is like Californian wildfires, and you get too much fire, and it can lead to free radical production and reactive oxygen species, which causes cell mutation, degeneration of cells, and early cell death, all that stuff. Too little oxygen, the fire doesn't burn at all. So you want the right balance of oxygen, and the more efficient your mitochondria are using oxygen and sugar, the healthier you are, because the less oxygen you have, the less oxidative stress you get, and the more overall efficiency you have over the body. So all of soma is about becoming extremely efficient at using as little oxygen as possible. So one of them is doing yoga in this style, right? Where you're doing static contraction, doing like physical moves where you're basically using your body weight, pushing against immovable objects and things like that.
Isometric contractions to exhaustion, sure.
The best, man, the best. And then the breathwork, so the breathing techniques. Okay, the cornerstone foundation of yoga and pranayama is breathwork, breathing. Okay, And breathing in a rhythm, okay, is the most important thing. So when you breathe in a rhythm, you breathe in for the same length of time as you breathe out in a cycle. Always through your nose in, and you can also breathe out through your mouth or through your nose, up to you. But you should always breathe through your nose in, and you should always try and breathe through your belly. And breathe into your belly and then into your chest so you get full breath. And if you can try and keep a rhythm throughout the day, like every single function in your body is rhythmical, okay? Your circadian rhythm, infradian rhythm, ultradian rhythm, they're all rhythms in your body. You have all these biorhythms. Every one of those rhythms is subservient to the rhythm of breath. So just by rhythmic breathing, actually, we can create a harmony in the body, right? You also create optimal blood flow from your heart to your brain, and you create a state called coherence, which raises your emotional quality, right? Coherence is this phenomenon that HeartMath studied, which shows optimum blood flow from your heart to your brain, harmonization, all the functions in your body, and a general feeling of peace and bliss and happiness, and a reduction in the feelings of guilt, sorrow, nervousness, and fear, all right? Just through rhythmic breathing for a few minutes, you can get into these states, okay? And so I've created a sequence, which is this pranayama technique, which I call the Soma Awakening, which basically is a combination of rhythmic breathing to music. So music has a beat. So when you breathe in a rhythm with the music, you automatically go into this rhythmic breathing, okay? And then you have these breakdowns where there's no beats, and you go into this breath retentions. And breath retention is known as kumbhaka in pranayama. Breath retention is all about holding your breath, either on the inhale, on exhale with no air in the lungs, or on the inhale with air in the lungs. When you hold your breath with no air in the lungs, okay, basically press pause on life, because life is just a series of inhales, exhales. When you press pause on your breath, press pause on life, and you go into this really still meditative state, okay? This is the point of meditation where you can experience the oneness of all that is, okay? This quest for like being able to still all your thoughts and everything, this is the hack for that, okay? Because when you breathe, you actually create thought. When you don't breathe, it's so much easier not to think of anything. And what can happen at this point is you go into these alpha theta brainwave states where you actually can wake up creative parts of the brain that you usually suppress because you're always alert. And through that, you can actually have aha moments, inspirational moments. You can also consciously control this by reprogramming your subconscious mind using affirmation, mantra, or visualization techniques, okay? NLP type techniques. You self-hypnotize yourself to create a result or a change in the body. Now, if you hold your breath for long enough, what happens is you suppress the oxygen in your body, and that basically is another form of creating hypoxia, systemic hypoxia in the body. Intermittent hypoxia has been studied by Russian scientists as this amazing phenomenon where people go up to high altitude, low oxygen environments, come back down, they get more fitter, they get more better performance, and you can even reverse degenerative issues. The reason why is your body makes an adaptive response to having less oxygen, produces more red blood cells, it dilates blood vessels in your body. You actually can wake up dormant parts of the brain. That's why I call it the awakening. So you wake up these like superpowers in the body. And then you also become more efficient using oxygen, so you need to breathe less during the day. And if you hold it for long enough, okay, you can also actually stimulate DMT. So long enough breath retention, you actually stimulate DMT in the body, okay, being produced, because you start to lower the oxygen to a point where DMT is needed to actually protect the cell from having less oxygen. DMT in the body has a strange function. It actually makes the cells survive when oxygen levels are very low. And this also has a psychedelic awakening effect, okay, the DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is this spirit molecule, this magical molecule that you find in psychedelic plants.
The active ingredient in ayahuasca.
Yeah, exactly. You can produce it naturally, right? And you produce all these feel-good hormones and all this stuff when you hold your breath beyond the comfort zone for a long enough period of time. So my Soma Awakening protocol, it actually takes you through a series of progressive breathing cycles that actually trains you to become efficient using oxygen, to wake up DMT, to actually activate dormant parts of the brain, awaken your brain to higher power, heightened powers of cognitive function, creativity, and to rid yourself of past trauma and to get rid of guilt and emotion and things that's stored in the physical body, and you clear them out. So soma is this whole process of like waking you up to your higher self. And yeah, it's amazing. We do it over 21 days. It's a super powerful technique. And we do these yoga techniques at the same time, which helps you to become more efficient using oxygen, so you can hold your breath for even longer. And actually, this is what the whole point of yoga was originally. And pranayama and meditation was so that you can hold your breath for a very strange length of time where you dissolve into the ether, which is basically like an ayahuasca trip. You know, so there's these famous stories of the superhuman yogis who can hold their breath for an hour and go into these samadhi states, you know, and they go for an hour and a half in kumbhaka, or to such slight breathing that they're in this hypoxic state for a very long periods of time where they don't need oxygen. And through that, they wake up the DMT and they live in this samadhi state. And they even like go into hibernation states where they literally can be buried underground, and they just switch off. They hibernate like animals hibernate. Anyway, yeah, so this is like going off on a bit of a tangent, but soma is actually an applicable thing. It has scientific explanation. We do all the yoga differently because instead of it being aerobic, it's anaerobic. We use breath retention rather than lots of rapid breathing. Oh yeah, we must get oxygen. No, the oxygen is not the problem. There's actually having too much oxygen, which is the problem. So everything I do is renegade because it goes against what we've been told in the convention. And the great thing is actually I've realized more and more, the more you do the opposite of what the mainstream tells you, the more successful you become, the more wealthy you become, the happier you become, and the more successful you become in life. So becoming a renegade, I think, is one of the most paramount things you can do for your well-being right now.
I love it, man. And you've definitely lived up to that name today. And by challenging a lot of what people think that they know. And I just want to follow up a little bit on what you said about the breath work. And I appreciate your efforts to try to use your pharmacy background to try to explain this stuff in terms of Western science, because that's the dominant paradigm out there right now, right? That's what people are looking to, like, please, nobody knows what to believe. They're, especially with my podcast, with the people who listen to this, they definitely have that mindset versus a lot of the alternative people, or whatever you'd like to call them, which sometimes make claims. I was very into that in my early 20s and had to come away from it because I wasn't getting results. And now I think we're at a point where there's more convergence of these two paradigms, and people like yourself and myself, for that matter, who are trying to like put things together in a way. And what I'd say to people who are listening, who are just like, I don't know, it sounds crazy. The explanation is one thing, but the experience is something else. And I would say, because I went into, I can't speak to what you do at Soma because I haven't experienced it yet, but I've experienced breath work, and I had a lot of, I wouldn't say I didn't believe in it. I've never experienced it before. So I went in with a very open mind, but not expecting too much. And I had huge breakthroughs, like what you said, releasing. I started laughing and feeling really energetic. And then I started crying, and I cried uncontrollably for like 20 minutes. And they had to come around and put hands on me to put pressure points. And one woman at one point held my hand and said, are you okay? I was like, I'm better than okay. I'm 100%. I had to let her know, like, this was a very good thing that was happening.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. Breathwork has many different components. So you can't class one technique as all of breathwork. Breathwork has many different methods, all right? And shouldn't confuse breathwork with pranayama. So pranayama is like a toolbox, a pharmacy of different breathing techniques with different functions, like lowering blood pressure, increasing adrenaline, and switching off stress, and has like a steroidal effect if you want. And then there's techniques for hypoxia, for creating this DMT type effects, rhythmic breathing for changing state. There's all these different ways. There's even a drinking air technique where you drink air into the intestines and it wipes out bad bacteria. So there's all these different techniques in pranayama, whereas a lot of the time breathwork is associated with this like rebirthing or holotropic, where it's just
right. Those are the ones that I've heard of.
Yeah. Which is actually just has this one place, which is for traumas and catharsis and things like that. But Soma is more of a daily practice. Like, you don't want to do those things every day because you're causing stress in the body and you're causing a lot of electricity being produced.
You don't want to live with bring up those traumas every day before you go to work, right?
Exactly. That's not daily practice. It's like going for a ayahuasca trip. But Soma is designed to be a daily practice. Okay, so there's different lengths of time, but it's a good daily practice and it follows this principle of intermittent hypoxic training, which the Russians made popular when they started to observe in the Mexican Olympics in the 80s that people kept winning world records all the time. And the reason why was because they were in very high altitudes. And then they observed like all these Himalayan yogis, why do they live longer? Why are they healthier? Why don't they get disease? And they realized it's the oxygen. Less oxygen leads to fitter, healthier bodies. Okay, so becoming more adapted to oxygen means that you're going to become better. So they created machines using they're called hypoxicators, which basically gives you a dose of normal oxygen followed by minutes of very low oxygen in a sequence, like alternative, over like a 90-minute period every day, and has amazing results. Whereas we can do the same, but just without using machines, we can do it for free of charge using breath retention, holding your breath. Rhythmic breathing followed by breath retention. This is what Soma, that's what one of the core techniques of Soma is. And you get the same amazing effects for free, all right? And it's an amazing phenomenon, and it can also be explained, the healing effects, stem cells. So stem cells is another big field of studies, right? Right now, like people are extracting stem cells for thousands of dollars. And David Asprey did some crazy things like injecting himself with stem cells in his brain and stuff. I think it's complete madness. You don't need to do all that. The yogis would laugh at him for being a bit of a moron, because playing with the body like that is not clever, in my opinion. It can lead to pretty serious side effects. I've known people who've got messed up from too many stem cell injections in the wrong areas. And anyway, so the point is actually when you create systemic hypoxia, stem cells love low oxygen environments. They hate oxygen, right? Actually, the time when you have the most stem cells is when you're in the womb as a developing fetus, and there's loads of stem cells because you're in a very low oxygen environment. As soon as you're born, all this oxygen comes in, right? And the stem cells rush and hide in the bone marrow and areas in the body where there's very low oxygen. So certain regions in the muscle tissue, there will be areas of normal healthy cells, and in the middle there'll be these stem cells, which is they survive because there's low oxygen there. But they only come out when there's systemic hypoxia, or if there's hypoxia in the muscle tissue. So what happens is then the low oxygen caused by breath retention, it wakes up the stem cells. They move out of the body. And because stem cells are innately intelligent, they'll move to areas in the body, like intelligently. The right ones will come out and they'll go out and play, and they'll lower inflammation, or they'll regenerate cells in the body that need replenishing. And the thing is, then you're doing it according to the nature's intelligence, the human intelligence. Whereas if you take a doctor's injection, we don't know what stem cells they're pulling out. We don't know what traumas they're causing by doing that. They don't know enough about stem cells themselves to warrant being able to do these expensive, invasive treatments. And so we don't know the side effects of these. Whereas the yogis have been doing pranayama and kumbhaka techniques for thousands of years. And there's some reason why intuitively children would do these like pass yourself out techniques as a kid. And it will almost be like, I don't know if you ever did that.
I did. Yeah. And I was worried, like, am I really messing myself up by doing this?
But these like passing yourself out techniques have been like Native Indians do it, shamanic people do it, because it's almost like a coming of age. Because when you do that and you create that lower than normal oxygen for a brief period of time, you wake up the body in a weird way. The body adapts suddenly to having less oxygen, and you wake up dormant parts of the brain. That's the whole purpose of it. The kids didn't know that. They probably got handed down through ancient traditions that got preserved, and got twisted and changed, and they turned into the schoolboy thing. But actually, there is some very, very serious science here that needs to be researched further. But you just have to see the results you get with using intermittent hypoxic training. The Russians do. They preserved a lot of this knowledge. You see the results I get in Soma with people. It's dramatic shifts.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And I got to say, if you're listening right now, definitely look into breath work. It's something that can take you to a level that just exercise, lifting weights, supplement, everything that you're doing now in nutrition, it's not going to be able to do. It's really some type of breath work, meditation, or what, the holotropic or the transformational or the Soma breath work or something. You've got to give it a try. It's one of those things that, again, it's something that is so powerful. You've got to challenge yourself to give it a try. And Niraj, man, thanks so much today for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge around this, and also your story. It's a really fascinating story. And if you want to check out what Niraj is up to, go to somabreath.com. That's SOMABREATH.com. And he doesn't just have retreats in Koh Phangan, if I said that correct, in Thailand, in other words, but he travels around the States, the UK, all around the world, right?
Well, we have an instructor training, and we have now over 100 instructors around the world. And it's grown into an amazing movement. People are becoming breath coaches, helping people to breathe properly and just having dramatic results with health issues without needing to take any pills. It's awesome. Just breathe.
You've got to try it out. You've got to try some type of breath work. Again, it's if you're not, you're missing out on a level of performance and happiness and joy and perhaps even healing that exercise isn't going to give you. Supplements are going to give you, sleep optimization isn't going to give you. So is there, Niraj, I've given your website out here. Is there anywhere else that you'd like people to go to learn more about you? Perhaps you offer free online awakening breathwork meditations.
Yeah. somabreath.com/awakening is a good place to go. And the renegadepharmacist.com as well. That's where I have a lot of my knowledge stored as well, articles on various issues and conditions and recipes. I'm big on making healing elixirs and potions. So check that out as well.
Very cool. And I'll have all of that up on the show notes. Niraj, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it. Learned a lot from you today, and looking forward to experiencing more breath work. Hopefully with my schedule, I'll be able to, I'll look at your events and make something happen, because I'm dying to go out to Koh Phangan anyway. I've been out in Thailand for the past year, haven't been there yet.
Yeah, you should come down, man. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Love to see you here.
Well, cool. We'll see about making that happen. In the meantime, again, thanks for coming on, and looking forward to connecting with you again soon.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Cheers, buddy.
That wraps up another episode of the Legendary Life Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I just want to address a few things. This is a longer episode than usual, so I'm going to keep this very short, but I want to say, I want you to focus on what you learned about breathwork today. I know that Niraj came on. He has a very different sort of approach and viewpoint about capitalism and some other things. Listen, it's cool. People have their different approaches to things, different perspectives, different viewpoints. That's okay. But what I want you to focus on every single episode, by the way, is taking what you need from the episode and leaving the rest. Far too often people get hung up on someone's beliefs, but listen, Niraj wasn't here trying to promote some sort of, change in consciousness necessarily, or change in approach in economic systems. What he's here to promote is breathwork, helping yourself get in better health and better performance. So keep that in mind, and always keep that in mind no matter what you listen to. Get what you need from it, get what's useful, discard the rest, and then apply it into your unique situation and unique life. That's how I want to say about that. And again, if you have some suggestions on episodes, or if you like this episode or didn't like this episode, I want you to reach out to me. Go to legendarylifepodcast.com, send me a message there, or find me on Facebook or Instagram and send me a message. By the way, don't add me as a friend on Facebook unless you send me a message. I will not add you back, okay? I don't confirm people. I'm trying to get rid of Facebook friends, not get more. So please reach out. If you reach out to me on Facebook, send me a message first, let me know. That's all I've got. Have an amazing week. Hope you enjoyed and learned a lot from this episode. And I guess the last thing I want to say really quick is challenge yourself to go try meditation, go try breathwork. Google breathwork, Google transformational breathwork, rebirthing breathwork, shamanic breathwork in your area. Find a place, go try it out. And don't try it out once, try it out a few times. I'm going today, literally today, to do a 2-hour breathwork class. Then I'm going to be doing it again next week, because you can't figure things out from one time. You've got to try things a few times. You got to give methods a chance to work. All right. That's the last thing I want to leave you with. Hope you enjoyed this. Speak to you soon. Have an amazing week. And that's a wrap.